Commander Laura Mitchell stood at the reinforced window of Orbital Station Horizon, watching the alien ships drift past like sharks circling wounded prey. There were 7 fleets out there, each belonging to different species, each one powerful enough to glass entire continents. They had come to Earth 12 years ago with a simple message. Humanity was too dangerous. Humanity was too unpredictable. Humanity would be contained. She remembered the day the sentence was delivered. The High Arbiter, a creature made of living crystal that pulsed with ancient light, had appeared on every screen across the planet. His voice had echoed through cities and villages, through military bases and hospitals, through schools where children stopped their lessons to listen to their fate being decided by beings they had never met. Earth would be quarantined. No human ship would be permitted to leave the solar system. Communication beyond the barrier would be forbidden. The planet's resources would be harvested at regular intervals to fuel civilizations that had earned their freedom through centuries of obedience. Humanity would provide labor, materials, and whatever else the Galactic Council demanded. In return, they would be allowed to exist. Laura had been a young captain then, stationed on one of the few military vessels that survived the initial enforcement action. She had watched helplessly as human ships were vaporized for attempting to breach the blockade. She had listened to the screams on the radio as colonies on Mars and the outer moons were systematically destroyed. She had seen the hope drain from the eyes of everyone around her as the reality of their situation became clear. There was no escape, there was no negotiation, there was only submission. The first 5 years were the hardest. Riots erupted across every continent. Resistance cells formed and were crushed. Millions died in futile uprisings against an enemy that possessed technology so advanced it seemed like magic. The aliens did not need to occupy Earth with ground troops. They simply demonstrated their power whenever defiance emerged, turning cities to ash from orbit with weapons that left no survivors and no doubt about who controlled the future. Eventually, the fighting stopped. Not because humanity had accepted its fate, but because the cost of resistance had become too high. People learned to bow their heads when alien inspectors walked through their streets. They learned to work the mining platforms that stripped their oceans of precious minerals. They learned to pretend that this was normal, that this was simply how life was now. But Laura never stopped watching, never stopped learning. She turned from the window as Lieutenant Brooks entered the observation deck. He was younger than her by 15 years, part of a generation that had grown up knowing nothing but occupation. Yet there was something in his eyes that reminded her of the old days, a spark that refused to die no matter how many times the aliens tried to extinguish it. "The Harvester is requesting early access to the Pacific platforms," he reported. "They want double the usual extraction, and they want it 3 weeks ahead of schedule." Laura took from his hands without looking at it. She already knew what it would say. The demands were always the same: more resources, more labor, more proof that humanity had been thoroughly broken. "Tell them we will comply." Hesitated. "Commander, the workers at those platforms are already exhausted. If we push them harder, people will die." "I know." Laura met his gaze steadily. "Tell them we will comply, and then send word to the network. Tonight we hold the council meeting." Understanding flickered across his face. He nodded once and left without another word. That night, Laura descended into the Earth. The bunker had been built during the first years of occupation, carved from solid rock 300 meters beneath the Nevada desert. It was shielded against every form of detection the aliens possessed, hidden so carefully that even the workers who had constructed it believed they were building an emergency shelter rather than a headquarters for rebellion. 47 people waited for her around a long table covered in stolen schematics, handwritten notes, and fragments of alien technology. They represented every continent, every surviving military branch, every field of science that still functioned under the watchful eyes of their captors. Some wore the uniforms of nations that no longer existed as independent states. Others wore civilian clothes stained with the grime of mining platforms and factory floors. All of them shared the same expression, determination tempered by 12 years of careful patience. Laura took her place at the head of the table and began to speak. They rotate their patrol schedules every 36 hours. The pattern has not changed in 8 years. Their commanders have grown comfortable, confident that we pose no threat. The harvesters operate on automated protocols that can be spoofed if you know the right frequencies. Dr. Cole has been studying those frequencies for the past 4 years, and he believes he has cracked them. She gestured to a thin man with graying hair and tired eyes who sat near the middle of the table. Cole had been one of Earth's most brilliant physicists before the occupation. The aliens had recognized his talent and put him to work improving their systems, never suspecting that every moment he spent in their facilities was another opportunity to learn their weaknesses. The garrison on the far side of the moon has been reduced to 40 soldiers, Laura continued. Their commander has not left his quarters in 3 months. He believes his posting is a punishment, a dead-end assignment watching a species that will never rise again. He is wrong. She laid out the plan piece by piece. The strikes would be simultaneous. The targets had been chosen with surgical precision. Every alien installation in the solar system would be hit at the same moment, giving the enemy no time to coordinate a response. Human pilots had been training in secret for years, using simulators built from salvaged technology and hidden in basements and abandoned warehouses across the planet. We will have one chance, Laura said. If we fail, they will destroy us completely. There will be no second occupation, no renewed attempt at containment. They will decide that humanity is too much trouble to keep alive, and they will end us. She looked around the table, meeting each pair of eyes in turn. But if we succeed, everything changes. Not just for us. For every species in the galaxy that has been told to kneel and stay down, we will show them that chains can be broken. We will remind them what it looks like when a people refuses to surrender their future. The room was silent for a long moment. Then Cole spoke, his voice quiet but steady. When do we begin? Laura smiled for the first time in years. 3 weeks. When the harvester arrives expecting doubled production, they will find something else waiting for them instead. She placed her hands flat on the table, feeling the weight of everything they were about to attempt pressing down on her shoulders. 12 years ago, they told us to kneel. We have been kneeling ever since, letting them believe they had won. But we were never broken. We were waiting. And now, finally, we are ready to stand. The meeting continued deep into the night, voices rising and falling as details were refined and responsibilities assigned. Above them, the alien ships continued their endless patrol, their crews never suspecting that the species they had dismissed as defeated was preparing to change the galaxy forever. Dr. Cole had spent 8 years pretending to be a broken man. The aliens valued human scientists for their creativity, their strange ability to solve problems in ways that baffled species who had relied on established methods for countless generations. They had brought him aboard their research vessels and set him to work improving their energy systems, their communication arrays, their weapons of war. They had watched him carefully at first, searching for signs of defiance or sabotage, but had given them nothing to fear. He had worked diligently, solved their problems efficiently, and never once complained about his situation. What they never realized was that every task they assigned him was another lesson. Every system he improved taught him something new about how their technology functioned. Every hour spent in their laboratories gave him access to components and materials that slowly disappeared into hidden pockets and secret compartments. The aliens trusted their security measures. They trusted their surveillance systems. They trusted that no human could possibly understand their technology well enough to turn it against them. They were wrong. The device in his hands was no larger than a coffee mug. It contained principles that the Galactic Council had banned over 300,000 years ago, technology so dangerous that entire civilizations had been wiped out for attempting to develop it. The aliens called it cascade disruption, a method of bypassing energy shields by folding space itself around the barrier rather than trying to penetrate it. The Council had destroyed every record of the research, executed every scientist who possessed the knowledge, and forbidden any species from ever exploring that path again. But they had never imagined that a primitive human, working with scraps and salvage, could rediscover what they had tried so hard to bury. Laura Mitchell stood beside him in the underground laboratory, watching as he made the final adjustments. "You are certain this will work?" "Theoretically." Turn the device over, examining the seams where human engineering met alien components. They use quantum-locked shields. Every weapon in the galaxy tries to break through those shields with raw force. This device does not try to break through. It simply makes the shield irrelevant by going around it through folded space. And the risks? Paused. He had always been honest with Laura, even when the truth was difficult to hear. The energy discharge will be visible from orbit. Every ship in the system will detect it immediately. We will have perhaps 6 hours before they can coordinate a full response. 6 hours will be enough. The plan had been refined over weeks of careful preparation. Every detail had been checked and rechecked. Every contingency had been considered. The human pilots who would carry out the strikes had rehearsed their roles until the movements were automatic. There was nothing left to do but wait for the moment to arrive. It came on a Tuesday morning, Earth time. The Harvester dropped out of faster-than-light travel exactly where it was expected, its massive bulk casting a shadow across the Pacific Ocean as it prepared to begin extraction operations. The crew aboard the alien vessel had made this journey dozens of times before. They expected the humans to have everything ready for them, the platforms prepared, the workers assembled, the resources waiting to be claimed. Instead, they found a small shuttle rising from the planet's surface on an intercept course. The commander barely had time to register confusion before its device activated. There was a flash of light that burned across the visible spectrum, a pulse of energy that sensors across the solar system detected and struggled to interpret. When the light faded, the Harvester was gone. Not destroyed in any conventional sense, but simply erased, its atoms scattered across dimensions that the alien crew could never have imagined. Before the debris field had finished expanding, the rest of the plan went into motion. Lieutenant Brooks led the assault on the lunar garrison. His team of 30 soldiers launched from a hidden base on the far side of Earth's moon, their stolen shuttles moving fast and silent through the vacuum. The guards never saw them coming. They had grown complacent after years of watching a species that never fought back, and that complacency cost them everything. His team breached the garrison's outer doors in under 2 minutes. The fighting inside was brief and brutal. Human soldiers armed with weapons built from salvaged alien technology and fierce determination overwhelmed defenders who had forgotten what it felt like to face an enemy that was not afraid to die. The commander emerged from his quarters to find human boots on his command deck and human weapons pointed at his chest. His 4 arms rose in surrender, but his voice was filled with disbelief rather than fear. "This is impossible," he said. "You cannot do this. The Council will send 100 fleets to crush you. They will burn your world until nothing remains." Smiled, and there was no warmth in it. "They have been trying to crush us for 12 years. Tell me how that has worked out for them." Across the solar system, similar scenes played out in rapid succession. Human teams seized mining platforms that had been stealing Earth resources. Patrol ships were boarded and captured by crews who had spent years studying their layouts and vulnerabilities. Communication relays were turned against their makers, broadcasting human signals on frequencies that the aliens had believed were secure. By nightfall, Earth's orbit belonged to humanity once again. Laura watched the reports come in from the command center beneath Nevada. Each success brought a new wave of cautious hope, but she refused to let herself celebrate. The hardest part was still to come. Defeating the ships in their own system was one thing. Surviving the response from the wider galaxy was something else entirely. The command ship is still intact, reported through the communication link. They have retreated to the outer system and are calling for reinforcements. Expected. Laura studied the tactical display, watching the single remaining enemy vessel hold position near the orbit of Neptune. How long until help arrives? Based on the communication traffic we have intercepted, the nearest fleet is 4 days away. But Laura, there is something else. They are not just calling for military support. They are calling for the Council to convene. They want a formal judgment. Laura nodded slowly. The Council meeting was exactly what she had been counting on. Let them meet. Let them discuss and debate and issue their proclamations. By the time they finish arguing about what to do, we will be ready for whatever they decide. She turned to the technicians working at stations around the room. Begin Phase 2. I want every device built deployed to its target within 48 hours, and someone get me a communication channel that can reach Prime. It is time to send the Council a message they will never forget. The technicians moved to obey, and Laura allowed herself a moment to breathe. 12 years of planning, 12 years of patience, 12 years of pretending to be defeated while building something that could shake the foundations of galactic civilization. It had all led to this moment. The species that had tried to chain Earth were about to learn what happened when humanity stopped pretending to be broken. The Great Chamber on Prime had not seen an emergency session in over 800 years. The last time the Galactic Council had gathered with such urgency, a rogue civilization had attempted to ignite a star as a weapon. That species no longer existed. There was now a memorial, a burned and lifeless rock that served as a reminder of what happened to those who the established order. Now representatives from 47 species filled the ancient hall, their bodies ranging from crystalline giants to creatures of pure energy contained in magnetic shells. The noise was overwhelming, a chaos of clicks, whistles, synthesized speech and frequencies that most organic ears could not detect. Holographic displays floated above the central platform, showing images of the devastation that had swept through Earth's solar system. Destroyed ships, captured installations. A species that had been declared, contained now standing free and defiant. High Arbiter called for silence. His crystalline form pulsed with agitated light as he rose to address the assembly. He was the eldest of a being who had witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations across tens of thousands of years. In all that time, he had never seen anything like what the humans had accomplished. This is a violation of everything the Council represents, he declared, his voice resonating through translation devices worn by every delegate. The humans were contained. They possessed no ships capable of threatening our vessels. They had no weapons that could breach our shields. They had no knowledge of the technologies required to challenge our authority. And yet they have done all of these things in a single day. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Species that had been rivals for exchanged uneasy glances. If the humans could break free from containment, what did that mean for the Council's ability to enforce its will across the galaxy? We must respond with overwhelming force, continued. Send every available fleet to the human system, destroy their infrastructure, eliminate their population, leave nothing but ash and a warning to any other species that might consider following their example. Before he could continue, every display in the chamber flickered. The images of destruction vanished, replaced by a single human face. Laura Mitchell looked out at the assembled delegates with calm eyes and a steady expression that betrayed no fear. Honored members of the Galactic Council. Her voice was measured, each word chosen with precision. 12 years ago, you decided that humanity was too dangerous to remain free. You were correct. We are dangerous, but you made a critical error in judgment. You assumed that danger could be caged. His form blazed with fury. You dare to address this council. You are criminals, insurgents. Your species forfeited any right to speak when you violated the terms of your containment. The terms of our enslavement, you mean? Laura did not raise her voice, but her words carried weight that silenced even the most agitated delegates. You stripped us of our ships. You harvested our resources. You killed millions of our people for the crime of wanting to be free. You called it containment. We called it exactly what it was. She paused, letting the silence stretch. We did not spend the past 12 years accepting our fate. We spent them learning. Every ship you sent to patrol our system, we studied its weaknesses. Every technology you used to strip our planet, we reverse-engineered in secret laboratories. Every soldier you stationed on our moon, we observed and planned. You taught us everything we needed to know about how to defeat you. We should thank you for the education. Slammed a limb against the podium, sending cracks spreading through the ancient stone. Empty words from a doomed species. You may have surprised us once, but you cannot stand against the combined might of this council. We will send 1,000 ships, 10,000. We will reduce your world to rubble and scatter your atoms across the void. You could attempt that, Laura acknowledged. But before you make that decision, there is something you should understand. The device that destroyed your harvester, the technology that bypassed your shields as if they did not exist, we did not build only one. Dr. Cole has been very productive over the past 8 years. We have constructed many such devices, and they are no longer on Earth. The chamber fell utterly silent. At this moment, cascade disruption devices are positioned at the heart of every major world represented in this council. Prime, the collective, the nexus, all of them. We did not want to take this step. We hoped that a demonstration of our capability would be sufficient to open negotiations, but you have made it clear that you only respond to power. Laura leaned closer to the camera, her eyes hard. So here is the power you understand. If any fleet moves against Earth, if any weapon is fired at our world, those devices will activate. Your civilizations will end in the same moment ours does. Mutually assured destruction is a concept humanity developed centuries ago. We are very good at it. You are bluffing, said, but his voice lacked its earlier certainty. You could not have developed such technology. You could not have deployed it without our knowledge. You are welcome to test that theory. Laura's expression did not change. Send your fleets, fire your weapons, discover whether I am bluffing, but know this. Humanity has nothing left to lose. You already tried to take everything from us. We have been living in the shadow of extinction for 12 years. That threat no longer frightens us. She straightened, and her tone shifted from confrontation to something almost diplomatic. We do not want war. We never did. All we wanted was the right to determine our own future, the same right that every species in this chamber claims for itself. You us that right, and we have taken it back. Now we are offering you a choice. Accept humanity as an equal partner in galactic affairs, or discover exactly how far we are willing to go. Stared at the image for a long moment. Around him, delegates whispered urgently to each other, calculating risks and weighing options. The balance of power that had defined galactic civilization for hundreds of thousands of years was shifting, and no one knew what the new order would look like. You ask us to accept you as equals after you have threatened our worlds with annihilation, said finally. That is not diplomacy. That is extortion. It is survival, Laura replied. You taught us that the Council only respects strength. We are simply speaking your language. She glanced at something off-screen, then returned her attention to the chamber. Representatives will arrive at the coordinates we are transmitting within 72 hours. They will be prepared to negotiate terms for humanity's integration into galactic society. Those terms will be fair. They will respect both our interests and yours, but they will not be negotiable on one point. Humanity will never again be chained. The transmission ended. The displays returned to their previous images, but no one was looking at them anymore. Every eye in the chamber was fixed on, waiting for his response. The High Arbiter stood motionless, his crystalline form dark and unreadable. "It appears," he said slowly, "that we underestimated the humans. That mistake will require careful correction." But correction of what kind, he did not say. The council session dissolved into arguments that would last for days, while far away, humanity waited to learn if their gamble had succeeded or if they had just started the final war. The negotiations took place on a station built specifically for the purpose, constructed in the empty space between star systems where no world could claim territorial advantage. Human engineers had worked alongside architects to create something that belonged to no one and everyone at the same time. It floated in the void like a promise, a fragile symbol of what might be possible if both sides chose to reach for it. Laura Mitchell led the human delegation through corridors that hummed with unfamiliar energy. She wore a simple uniform bearing patches from dozens of nations, a reminder that she represented not any single country but an entire species. Dr. Cole walked beside her, his eyes constantly moving, analyzing every piece of alien technology they passed. Behind them came advisors, translators, and specialists in fields ranging from economics to interstellar law. They had prepared for every scenario they could imagine, and several they hoped would never materialize. High Arbiter had refused to attend in person. The insult was deliberate and obvious. Instead, he had sent junior representatives, young who lacked the authority to make binding decisions, and whose presence was meant to signal that the Council did not consider humanity worthy of serious engagement. Laura treated their presence as an opportunity rather than an obstacle. The junior diplomats were less bound by tradition than their elders. They had not spent centuries enforcing the established order. Some of them had even expressed private doubts about whether the containment policy had been wise in the first place. Counselor was one of these younger voices. She was small for her crystalline structure more delicate than the towering forms of her superiors. But her mind was sharp, and Laura had noticed her listening carefully during sessions where others simply waited for their turn to speak. "Your proposal is unprecedented," said during one of the formal sessions. "No species has ever demanded integration into council affairs after being classified as a threat. The framework does not exist for what you are requesting." "Then we will build a new framework," Laura replied. "The council has existed for how long? 500,000 years. Surely in all that time you have encountered situations that required adapting your rules." "Adaptation is not the council's strength." His tone was dry, almost amused. "We prefer stability. Change is viewed as inherently dangerous." "And yet here we are." Laura spread her hands. "Change has arrived whether you welcome it or not. The question is whether you will shape it or be shaped by it." The sessions continued for weeks. Every point was debated, every term negotiated and renegotiated. Laura found herself developing a grudging respect for the alien diplomats, even the ones who clearly wished humanity had remained in chains. They were skilled at their work, capable of finding objections to proposals that seemed ironclad and identifying complications that human planners had overlooked. But they were also bound by assumptions that humanity did not share. They believed that every species reached a plateau, a point of maximum development beyond which no further growth was possible. They believed that stability was the highest virtue, that the proper response to uncertainty was control rather than exploration. They could not comprehend a species that saw challenges as opportunities and obstacles as invitations. One evening, Laura found alone on one of the station's observation decks. The young stood before a vast window, watching distant stars drift slowly past. "You fascinate me," said without turning around. "Your species, I mean. Every other civilization that the Council contained eventually accepted their position. Some took centuries, but they all broke in the end. You lasted 12 years and emerged stronger than before." Laura moved to stand beside her. "We are not special. We are simply stubborn. When someone tells us we cannot do something, we take it as a challenge rather than a limitation. That stubbornness nearly destroyed you. The council came very close to approving an extermination order. If your devices had not been in position, if your bluff had been called, your entire species would be dead now. It was not a bluff. Laura kept her voice even. We were prepared to follow through. That is what your council fails to understand. You think we were gambling. We were not. We had made peace with the possibility of extinction. Dying free seemed preferable to living in chains. Turned to face her, crystalline features catching the starlight. That is precisely what terrifies them. A species that values freedom more than survival cannot be controlled through threats. You remove their primary tool of enforcement. Is that why you are here instead of? Because he is afraid of us. He is afraid of what you represent. You have shown that containment can fail. Every subjugated species in the galaxy will learn of your rebellion. Some of them will begin to wonder if they too could break free. Paused. The Council has maintained order through the belief that resistance is futile. You have proven that belief false. Laura nodded slowly. Good. Good tilted her head. You want other species to rebel. I want other species to have hope. There is a difference. Laura turned back to the window. The galaxy your council has built is stable, but it is not just. You have decided that some civilizations deserve freedom and others deserve chains, based on criteria that serve your interests rather than any moral principle. We are not just fighting for ourselves. We are fighting for the idea that every thinking being has the right to determine their own path. They stood in silence for a long moment, two representatives of civilizations that had been enemies watching the same stars from the same window. The Council will never truly accept you as equals, said finally. Too many of them see your success as a threat to their power. I know, but acceptance can grow from understanding, and understanding grows from contact. Every day these negotiations continue, your people learn more about us. Every conversation we have plants seeds that will take years to bloom. Laura smiled slightly. We are patient when it matters. We waited 12 years for our moment. We can wait longer for true acceptance. And if it never comes, if they gain control and decide that extermination is worth the cost, then we will fight. Laura's voice was quiet but certain. And we will make sure that victory costs them so much they will never try again. But I do not think it will come to that. Your council is not evil. It is simply old. It has forgotten what it feels like to grow, to change, to embrace uncertainty as opportunity. We can remind them. Considered this for a long time. When she spoke again, her voice had lost its diplomatic distance. There are others like me, younger delegates who question the old ways. If humanity proves that integration can work, that your species can contribute to galactic civilization without destabilizing it, we would have evidence to support reform. Then let us give you that evidence. Laura extended her hand, a human gesture that had no meaning in culture but whose intent was unmistakable. Work with us. Help us find solutions that your elders cannot see. Show them that the future does not have to look like the past. Studied the offered hand for a moment. Then, slowly, she extended a crystalline limb and allowed it to make contact. This is either the beginning of something remarkable, she said, or a mistake that will haunt both our peoples for generations. Probably both, Laura admitted. The best beginnings usually are. The final agreement was signed on the anniversary of Earth's liberation. It was not perfect. Old resentments lingered beneath diplomatic language. Some council members voted against it and immediately began building quiet alliances for future opposition. But for the first time in 12 years, human ships could travel freely among the stars. Human voices could be heard in the halls of galactic power, and human children could grow up knowing that their future was their own to shape. It was enough. It was a beginning. 5 years had passed since the liberation, and Earth had transformed in ways that would have seemed impossible during the dark days of occupation. Cities that had been stripped of resources and left to crumble were rebuilt with hybrid technology, blending human innovation with alien knowledge that was now freely traded rather than stolen in secret. The orbital stations that had once served as symbols of oppression now welcomed ships from dozens of species, their docking bays busy with commerce and cultural exchange that grew more vibrant with each passing month. Laura Mitchell had retired from military service 2 years earlier, though she remained a consultant to the newly formed Earth Defense Council. She had given enough of her life to fighting. Now she wanted peace, or at least something close to it. She had bought a small house on the Oregon coast, a place where she could watch the waves and listen to the wind and remember all the people who had not lived to see their world set free. Dr. Cole visited her on a spring morning when the sky was clear and the ocean sparkled like scattered diamonds. His hair had gone gray in the years since the rebellion, and his step was slower than she remembered, but his eyes still held the same sharp intelligence that had made him invaluable during the planning stages of their uprising. "Counselor sent a message," he said, settling into a chair on her porch. "The reformist faction is gaining ground in the council. She believes that within a generation, the old guard will be completely replaced by delegates who see humanity as partners rather than problems." Laura poured him coffee from a pot she kept warm for visitors. "Good. Those crystalline fossils have been blocking progress for too long. The younger species deserve better leadership." She also mentioned something interesting, accepted the cup and wrapped his hands around it, though the morning was warm enough that he did not need the heat. They have formally requested human advisors for their military restructuring. They want to learn how we think, how we plan, how we manage to accomplish what should have been impossible. Laura laughed, a sound she had not made often during the long years of occupation. "The irony is not lost on me. 10 years ago they were guarding us like prisoners. Now they want our help." "We showed them something they had forgotten," said. "That power is not just about weapons and numbers and technological superiority. It is about will, about the refusal to accept limits that others try to impose. They were never a dominant species in the council hierarchy. They followed orders because they believed they had no other choice. Now they are wondering if perhaps they do." From her porch, Laura could see the faint shimmer of an orbital station passing overhead. Somewhere up there, human crews worked alongside beings from a dozen worlds, building something new. Ships carried cargo between Earth and colonies that humanity had established on worlds the Council had opened to settlement. Scientists shared research that advanced understanding for everyone involved. It was messy and complicated and often frustrating, but it was also alive in a way that the old galactic order had never been. "You know what I think about most often," Laura said. "Not the fighting, not the planning or the sleepless nights or the fear that we had miscalculated and doomed our entire species. What stays with me is the moment we sent that first message to the Council. The look on his face when he realized we had not just survived, we had grown." Fear said, "I remember it clearly, pure crystalline terror." "At first, yes, but underneath it there was something else. The beginning of respect, maybe, or at least the recognition that they had misjudged us so completely that all their assumptions needed to be reconsidered." Laura set down her cup and looked out at the water. "We did not just break their chains. We changed the rules of the game. Every species in the galaxy is going to have to reckon with what that means." Was quiet for a moment. "Some of them are already reckoning with it. Tells me there have been 3 separate liberation movements on contained worlds since we broke free. 2 of them failed, but the third succeeded. The Dominion threw off their restrictions 6 months ago using tactics they learned from studying our rebellion." "I heard." Laura's expression grew thoughtful. "The Council is terrified. They keep passing new resolutions trying to prevent other species from following our example, but they cannot put the knowledge back in the box. Once people know that freedom is possible, they start to want it for themselves." "Is that what you intended? To start a cascade of rebellions across the galaxy?" Laura considered the question seriously. "I intended for us to survive. Everything else was secondary, but I cannot pretend I am unhappy about the wider effects. The Council built their order on the assumption that contained species would stay contained forever. We proved that assumption false. Now they have to deal with the consequences. A ship descended through the atmosphere in the distance, its hull gleaming with the distinctive design signatures of construction. Laura watched it until it disappeared below the horizon, heading toward one of the major spaceports that now dotted the planet. Do you ever wonder if we did the right thing? He looked at her with surprise. You have doubts. Not about the rebellion, that was necessary, but about everything that came after. She gestured toward the sky, encompassing the orbital stations and the ships and the vast network of relationships that now connected Earth to the wider galaxy. We forced our way into their civilization. We demanded a seat at their table. Some days I wonder if we should have asked for more distance instead, built our own path rather than joining theirs. Considered this for a long time. The galaxy is too small for isolation. Eventually, we would have encountered the Council again, and they would have tried to contain us again. At least this way we have influence. We can shape how things develop rather than simply reacting to what others decide. I suppose, Laura sighed, I am too old for politics. Let the younger generation worry about galactic diplomacy. I have earned the right to sit on my porch and watch the waves. You have earned more than that. Finished his coffee and set the cup aside. You have earned a place in history. 1,000 years from now, children on 100 worlds will learn about Commander Laura Mitchell, the woman who proved that chains could be broken. I had help. None of it would have happened without you, without the 47 people who sat around that table in Nevada and decided that freedom was worth dying for. True, but someone had to lead. Someone had to stand at the front and make the hard decisions. That was you. Rose from his chair, joints creaking in protest. I should go. I have a lecture to give at the academy this afternoon. Young officers who want to learn how we planned the rebellion. Tell them the truth, Laura said. Tell them it was messy and terrifying and we were never sure it would work. Tell them we argued constantly and second-guessed every decision. Tell them that courage is not the absence of fear but the decision to act despite it. I always do, smiled and moved toward the door, then paused. Laura, for what it is worth, I have never doubted that we did the right thing. The galaxy needed to see that the Council was not invincible. Humanity needed to see that we were capable of more than survival. Both things happened because of what we accomplished together. He left, and Laura sat alone on her porch as the morning gave way to afternoon. The waves continued their eternal rhythm, unchanged by galactic politics or interstellar treaties. Ships came and went overhead, carrying goods and people between worlds that had once seemed impossibly distant. She thought about the young delegates like who were pushing for reform in the council chambers. She thought about the Dominion, newly free and struggling to build a society without the structure of containment. She thought about all the species who were watching and waiting, wondering if they too might someday claim the freedom that humanity had fought for. They had tried to chain Earth. Every major power in the galaxy had agreed that humanity was too dangerous to be free. They had sent their fleets and enforced their will, and believed that the matter was settled forever. Now those same powers sent diplomats to negotiate trade agreements. They sent scholars to study human creativity. They sent military advisors to learn human tactics. The species that had tried to put humanity on its knees was now standing taller than ever before. And across the galaxy, others were beginning to stand as well. Laura closed her eyes and let the sound of the ocean wash over her. She had done her part. The future belonged to those who came after, to the generations who would never know what it felt like to live under chains. They would build on what she and the others had started. They would push further, reach higher, dream bigger than any contained species had ever dared. That was enough. That was everything. The sun moved across the sky, and Laura Mitchell sat on her porch and watched the world she had helped to save continue its slow dance with the stars.